Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into something pretty amazing, the journey from a simple biological function, like your heartbeat, to a sophisticated medical device that can literally save a life. It's this incredible place where science meets design.
I mean, it really does seem like magic, doesn't it? That invisible electrical pulse inside your chest, and then boom, it's a clear, readable line on a monitor. But it's not magic, of course. The answer is all about the partnership between two really powerful fields: biology and engineering.
You can think of it like this. Biologists are the detectives. They're out there figuring out the incredibly complex systems of the body. They're asking, what is going on here? Engineers, on the other hand, they're the builders. They take that information and ask, okay, how can we build something useful with this? And when those two worlds collide, that's when incredible things happen.
And that collaboration isn't random. It follows this really clear 5-stage engineering pathway. It's a roadmap that takes an idea all the way from a biological concept straight to a patient's bedside. And today, we're going to walk through every single step.
So here's the big question. How do you even start? How do you take the beautiful, messy, complex world of biology and translate it into the structured, logical world of engineering? Well, it all kicks off right here with step 2, creating a mathematical model. This is the crucial translation step, where we turn the biological process into a language that engineers can actually build with. And that language is math.
And don't let the name fool you. A mathematical model isn't just some abstract theoretical thing. Think of it more like a recipe, or even better, a blueprint. It's a set of equations that captures the essential rules of how something works in the body, giving us a virtual version to play with.
And what's so cool is you can apply this to almost anything. You want to build an ECG? Well, you start by modeling the heart's electrical signals. You want to understand the brain? You model how neurons fire. You can even model the physics of how our muscles contract.
Now, you absolutely do not need to be a mathematician to see just how powerful this is. An equation that looks this simple can hold the entire blueprint for a virtual heartbeat. It's basically a rule book that tells a computer how a heart cell's voltage is connected to the tiny electrical currents flowing through it. It turns biology into code.
So, we've got our blueprint. But how do we know if it's actually any good before we start spending a ton of money on parts? Well, that brings us to the next stage, simulation.
Step 3, simulation. Honestly, the best way to think about this is like a flight simulator, but for medical technology. It's the digital dress rehearsal, where engineers can test their blueprint in a totally safe virtual world. And you're probably asking a pretty fair question. Why bother with all this virtual stuff? Why not just get on with it and build the real thing? Well, it turns out there are some huge, really important reasons.
First and foremost, and this is the big one, it is 100% safe for patients. You can push the virtual system to its breaking point, you can test every possible failure, you can crash the device 1,000 times, and absolutely no one gets hurt.
And then there's the practical stuff. It is so much cheaper and faster. Just imagine trying to build 100 different physical prototypes. The cost, the time. With a simulation, you can create and test 100 digital versions in a tiny fraction of the time and cost.
And this is where it gets really powerful. Engineers can test thousands of different scenarios. What happens with a patient who has a rare condition? What if there's electrical interference from another device? You can test for all these what-ifs that would be totally impossible to replicate in a real-world lab.
And this is not science fiction. We're talking about powerful, off-the-shelf software tools like MATLAB for running these simulations, or Python for building the diagnostic AI. These programs are the virtual workshops where the next generation of medical devices are being born.
Okay, so the design has passed all the virtual stress tests, it's safe, it works, in the computer. Now it's finally time to make this thing real. It is time to build. We're at step 4. This is that magic moment where all the code, all the math gets turned into circuits and wires and plastic. A real tool that a doctor or a patient can actually hold and use. Let's go back to our ECG example. The physical device is basically a little assembly line for information. It starts with the heart's faint electrical signal, the electrodes pick it up, and then that signal goes on a journey through all these different components until we get a clean, digital, and useful diagnosis at the end.
And when you break it down, it's so cool how each piece has just one critical job. The electrodes are the listeners. The amplifier is like a megaphone. The filters are the bouncers at the club, kicking out all the unwanted noise. The ADC is the translator, turning an analog wave into digital ones and zeros. And finally, the AI chip is the brain that makes the call. Every step is vital.
So, we have a device. It works. It's passed its virtual tests.
But the journey is not over. In fact, you could say the most important part is just getting started.
The final, and arguably most critical stage, is clinical application. Because a tool, no matter how clever it is only useful if it can safely and effectively help real people in the real world.
And this slide right here, this is the why. This is the whole point of the entire process. The goal isn't just to build a cool gadget. It's to actually improve patient care, to let people monitor their health from home, to cut down on dangerous medical errors, and to make sure the devices we rely on are safe.
And let's be super clear, these aren't just suggestions or nice-to-haves. To get from the lab to a hospital, a device has to go through an absolute gauntlet of strict global standards for quality, for safety, and for regulatory approval from bodies like the FDA in the US. It is the final guarantee that a device is ready.
So there you have it. From a single biological spark all the way to a life-saving tool. It all comes down to this powerful 5-step process. It really makes you wonder, right? I mean, from modeling the brain to designing smarter prosthetic limbs. What incredible biological problem is this process going to solve next?